the topic of the day that came up because of several reasons. Actually, the topic of the day that came up for me was the daily Scrum, and I'm always, like, as the product owner to the team, I'm always going back and forth with my team about, like, what I want to not what I want to get out of the daily Scrum, but, like, as the product owner listening to the daily Scrum, like, I was not always a product owner, so I have insight into, like, what the team should be doing in the daily Scrum, and then what I see the team doing in the daily Scrum. So I'll usually kind of stay silent just so the team can get what they need. But sometimes I see the team backsliding into, like, here's my status, and there's not really any synergy coming out of what they're saying to each other or whatever. And the last two sprints were particularly painful for me because we added somebody to the team. And then we had somebody, like, doing, like, they had just joined the company, so it was like a special guest appearance. They weren't really team members. They were just, like, being familiar with, you know what I mean? They were going to bounce into the Scrum and hang out and kind of watch the team for a sprint or two or whatever, and then eventually they were going to not be on the team anymore because they were like a team lead kind of position.
Right.
I don't know, like, if it shouldn't end up being permanent. I don't know if it will or not. That's a whole different story. But the point was, like, with that person who wasn't part of the team, because the team members saw that person as, like, up here in the hierarchy or whatever, they started sliding into, like, status reporting and stuff. So I started thinking to myself. Now, of course, I didn't bring this up, like, in the meeting at the time, but I started thinking to myself, I was like, man, the three questions, like, do not suit us in this format at all, and especially in I could see it applied in a situation where there is, like, not a lot of psychological safety going on. I could see a different framework needing to be applied in the daily Scrum.
Yeah, so the daily Scrum as an event is, I think, quite often misunderstood.
Mm-hmm.
You know, people treat that as a status meeting, like you said, right? They feel like they're obligated to attend. And when they attend, it's more like a justification meeting. It's like, this is what I did.
Yeah.
This is what I plan to do, right? And here's where I need help. And most people are, they tone back the here's where I need help part because they feel like that's showing their incompetence almost. It's like, I'm not able to fix this myself, so I need help.
Yeah.
Reaching out for help should be encouraged, but they feel like, okay, I don't want to say that because I might be able to fix it myself.
Yeah.
Or I'll sneak around and talk to somebody who can help me out. Which is, all of that is entirely not the point of a daily stand-up. People forget that it's a meeting that is primarily for the team,
Yeah.
by the team, and it's a planning meeting. You're planning the next 24 hours. You have your sprint plan going in. You have your sprint deliverables now. And let's say you're on a 2-week sprint cadence. So for 2 weeks, you can't not meet till the end of the sprint and say, here's how we do it.
Right.
Every day you need to synchronize, or every now and then, it might as well be daily, and say, this is what I'm doing. Am I going to upset somebody else's work by doing what I'm doing? I'm about to deploy X. Who else is it going to impact, right? So it's really a synchronization and a planning meeting. And it's not a status update. So it's not a justification meeting where you say, oh, this is what I did yesterday. I'm actually working, trust me.
Yeah.
It's not that.
Yeah.
And I feel like whenever you have people from outside of the team looking in, and that includes, the product owner, there might be a PMO member there, etc. The team is kind of on the back foot thinking, how are we going to be perceived? So we may as well say a bunch of stuff that we did and that we're working on. And that's missing the point entirely.
Mm-hmm.
The most ideal type of a contribution from a team member might be, here's what I'm doing. Anybody have an issue with that? If somebody speaks up, just say, how can we fix it?
Yeah.
Or the other one is, I have this need, and I don't know how to fulfill that. Reach out for help.
Mm-hmm.
And as a Scrum Master, what you're saying is, I see so-and-so has a need. Who can help? Right? From within the team. Ideally, somebody from within the team would put their hand up and say, I'll pitch in with you. right? Or nobody does that, and then the Scrum Master could offer something like, let's reach out to somebody else. Let's reach out to an architect. Let's reach out to somebody else at the PMO, whoever, to resolve this quote-unquote issue you have. So that really should be the idea. It should be lightweight. It should not be this regimented 3-question thing, right? And teams that are happiest in conducting this kind of an event are those that simply walk the board and they simply say, this is the amount of work that we have on. Here's what I'm doing. Here's what I'm planning to do now. And tell me if I'm going to get in somebody's way. Or here's what I'm trying to do. I need help.
Yeah. All right. So you went there first. you cracked first. So let's. So I have the 3 questions, and I have walk the board. I'm sure there's probably other methods. They're probably not even any methods. They're probably just like talk about whatever. I don't know. There's probably other methods. I'm not considering those right now. I probably should bring a few more things into this, but just for the purposes of clarity, I want to stick with the two things, which is walk the board versus the 3 questions. Like everybody knows the 3 questions, so we'll start with. I almost want to jump straight to walk the board, just because everyone knows that almost everyone's probably watching this and knows the 3 questions, and they probably do the 3 questions in their day to day. What am I doing? Well, actually, when I do 3 questions, I will start with. Is there anything blocking your work? I start with that, and then I do, I actually do them in reverse in my when I run a team as a Scrum Master. Yay, being a Scrum Master. No, I'm not looking forward to it. But I actually start in reverse. I'm like, hey, are you blocked on anything? And I need to know that. And what are you gonna get done today? And then I really don't care what you did yesterday. Exactly. Unless you're done with it. Unless you're done.
Yeah, I mean, what you did yesterday is really history.
Yeah. Well, we talked about it yesterday.
Well, the only reason to mention that, and it shouldn't be everybody saying this every day. The only reason to mention is if it's significant enough where you might have impacted somebody, right?
Right.
So you say, well, I did this deployment yesterday.
Right, yeah.
And then somebody might say, oh, maybe that's why my stuff's broken.
Right.
That's the only reason to mention it.
Yeah. The testers, a lot of times on my teams, it's very important for them to know, I completed this issue, rolled it out into a staging environment or whatever yesterday. Oh, you did? Oh, I didn't realize that you were. Now I'm going to start working on whatever, or whatever.
Right. Yeah. So as far as the 3 questions, though, what's interesting is that it's been ingrained in people over years through various iterations of the Scrum Guide that that's what you do. The last iteration in December 2020, they did away with it. So you're no longer required to answer the 3 questions to, quote unquote, abide by the Scrum Guide, right? And I think that's part and parcel of them trying to apply Scrum outside of software development. But regardless, the 3 questions were, I think, designed for teams to at least start doing something. But when the team's starting to Scrum initially, they don't know each other. Right? So this might be a structure you start with, but it should be decimated quickly, I think, because it just evolves into this, here's what I do, and it becomes rote. This is what I do. And you'll know you've got there because a team member, let's say, has some event, they cannot attend the daily stand-up.
Yeah, right.
They'll send you their update. And they'll say, here's what I worked on yesterday, right? I mean, the value is not in that status. The value is in the conversation. Right? So that's one thing. The other thing to note is this. This is so funny. Some Scrum Masters will actually write this stuff up. I was asked once by a PMO level person to say, we want in on the daily. And I'm like, no, right? I don't really see the value for that. And they said, oh, well, then send us the minutes. I'm like, no, I'm not going to document that stuff. It's trivia, right? And no, you certainly don't need to know that. Now, if there's anything to escalate, by all means, right? So I will be the first one to contact you. But I'm not sending out minutes every day.
What would you, outside of the team, what would you need to know? I guess the only thing I would think, if somebody asked me to do that, let me think about this for a second. And actually take it seriously. If somebody were to ask me, you need to send me the minutes of your daily Scrum. First of all, they're asking for an update from a meeting that potentially could be 5 minutes long. So, I mean, the summary of it could be as simple as We finished this work item yesterday, and we're starting this work item today. How is that valuable?
It's only valuable if they're looking to take that and feed it upstream to justify their own existence.
How would that be? Oh, well,
right?
okay.
So
yeah,
they would say,
right,
I've got the teams. This team is doing this team's doing it. It's a status report
Oh, wow.
kind of structure, right?
Oh, listen. I'm not attacking anyone on the internet, but what a sad job.
Oh, really? It is.
Like you're basically turning. You're basically taking what you can get directly out of the system and turning it into an email to justify that you're busy.
Yeah, justify why they should employ you, right? So you're a status regurgitator, and those are really bad jobs.
Ooh.
Yeah, and
Ooh.
people that find themselves in that are the old school kind of PMO people or project managers, because that's what they always did. You know, they'll pick at the smallest thing they see in your status update if you did one from the daily, and they'll say, what about this, right? It's like, it's not worth your time, honestly.
I mean, that sounds terrible. Like I could even like, if you're going to talk about like a flow rate or something like that, if they're like, hey, I see that you've like your team's flow rate is like 2 items a day, but it looks like you've gone 2 days without clearing a single item. Like, I could see somebody from outside the team looking at that metric and then stepping in then and be like, is there some kind of big problem that you like? It looks like you guys haven't made any progress when you guys normally, are progressing at this rate or whatever. But only from a perspective of, can I do something to help unblock your team from a higher level, like a Scrum's master,
right,
or like a release train engineer, or somebody who's like, your team obviously is having a problem. I can see it in the metric. It might not be anything out of the ordinary. It might just be like, hey, well, we're having a problem with this because it's much different than our normal work. Once we're over it, we'll be back to our normal flow and whatever, and we'll catch up in the stats. But I'm just checking in. Like, I'm not trying to pressure you, but I'm just checking in to make sure you need, you know what I mean? If it was that kind of thing, I would be like, cool, I can see it. But even if it's that kind of thing, they could see it in the metrics.
They can.
They can just go to a dashboard and see it. They don't need to.
You're right. So on the flow metrics, right? Flow metrics are very useful, but they're not that micro level that where you need to examine them every day. That's the first thing, right?
No.
There might be a little kink in the flow.
They
That's
wouldn't-
because 2 people called in sick today, right?
Yeah, right.
Somebody thought they had COVID and they're quarantining,
Right.
whatever it is.
Right.
So, I mean, if with that intention, it would be more like, we noticed there's a slight anomaly. Can we help in some way, right? That would be awesome.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what I've seen is not that. What I've seen is, I heard one of the team members say they're dropping a story and working on something else because you have a dependency. How can we, what are you doing about that dependency? Where the Scrum Master, the poor fellow, is trying to actually solve the dependency without having to explain to somebody else why this dependency exists, what they've done to solve it. That's just extra admin overhead that nobody needs.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty sad because it's not helpful. But to segue us back to the actual topic, which was that you've got the 3 questions. Basically, everybody knows what the three questions is. But like, tell me about walk the board. Like, let's walk through walk the board. What is that?
Yeah. So this term, walk the board, again means different things to different people. To me, it is an activity that the team conducts for themselves. And what they're doing is they're looking at a place collectively where the work is displayed. It's usually the sprint backlog. They look at that and say, off the sprint backlog that we broke down into tasks, if you do that, because you don't really need to, but if you do that, they look at that and say, off the work that we have on deck, how are we looking? How are we looking to progress today? And it's the attack plan of the day. This is what we're going to do to attack the work we have in place. And again, the value is in the dialogue. Somebody else could say, I see you're going to work on that today. Well, I owe you something that helps you move along with that, and I'm not going to get to that today. Right? So then this other person could say, well, if you're not going to get to that, that's fine. I'm going to pivot to do something else. What else can I pick up?
Yeah.
And everybody watching in learns about what these 2 people are doing or what everyone else is doing, and they can say their piece. Like, if a story is almost done, and you're looking for the tester to now say, okay, I've done regression with that. They may say, well, I haven't even got the regression test written yet, right? So that's okay, right? It'll just sit there waiting, but just know that. Don't expect it to move. That's just knowledge. So walking the board literally is looking at the work ahead for the day and really kind of quickly going over the plan of attack. I'm doing this, what are you doing, right? That's basically it. And of course, the people that are watching, notably the Scrum Master, is simply looking for anything that potentially could be an impediment and offering up suggestions to resolve that.
See, the other way I've seen the other way I've seen people actually use the walk the board method is they'll start at the top priority item, and assuming the top priority item's not done. Obviously, you don't need to go over things that are done, but they start at the top priority with the highest priority item in the sprint that is not complete yet, and they'd say, okay, what are we doing to finish this, or where are we at with this, or who's working on this next, or whatever, and they'll basically start from the top priority and walk down. Now on the best teams, they'll walk down generally to the things that are like moving or in progress, or the development team tells them are about to be in progress, and they'll ignore the lower stuff in the priority. The worst teams, they will actually literally be like, what's going on with this item? Item number 1, what's going on with item number 2, what's going on with item number 3, all the way down to the backlog, even to the stuff that like it's obvious it's not going to make it in the sprint or whatever. Like why are we even talking about that? It's not going to make it. Just cut it.
Yeah, those are the teams that go over their 15 minutes or half an hour because they're combing through everything. Yeah. So firstly, you're right. Some teams do go over the board in priority order.
Yeah.
I think it largely depends on the team and their approach. So one of my teams right now, they swarm on everything. So an individual developer doesn't work on a story by themselves, or by himself or herself, right? So what they do is 2, 3, 4 people could swarm on a story, and typically there is some semblance to like a priority order, but it's not what you think. They take on a series of stories, a bunch of stories to put into the sprint, which is their sprint commit. Now, the order in which they tackle these stories has nothing to do with the PO's order. Right? The PO's order simply says, these are the things I would like get done.
Yeah.
Right? The team says, of those 8 things, we think we can do these 6. So we'll put those into the sprint. But then those 6, the way they're tackled and the order in which they're tackled is entirely up to the team, not the order that the PO organized the product backlog. Here's the reason behind that. Within the 2-week period, whatever sprint length you're in, you've got to get those done. Now you decide the how. So the PO says, I want X. Well, the team goes, in order to do that, we have to do this first, right? So there's the order change already. Now we're going to work on this thing, which feeds on, right? Well, this other thing feeds on it. So it's a prerequisite, right? We're going to create the schema. We're going to create the database, whatever it is. So the team will come up with the right sequence of stories to tackle. Now they're guided by the size more than the priority order of the PO. They're guided by the size, and the reason is you don't want to wait till the second half of your sprint to take on a big thing because you're not going to finish it.
I understand.
So in that scenario where multiple team members are swarming, then yes, they will look at the story that most people are working on, or the one that has the highest effort, and they'll say, how are we doing on this, right? Do we have anything that can stop us from finishing this?
Yeah.
So I think that's a valid approach. It assumes a certain level of team maturity that they can do that.
Yeah.
Because the other thing that can happen is if you've got 4 people working on something, it may be that one of the team members who had planned on performing certain tasks isn't able to get to their tasks, right? So what do they do now? Because they've invested in this story thus far. So a mature team, or more mature team, I should say, that person would say, while I'm waiting for that, I can pivot and do this. While I'm waiting for that, I can help my tester, right? Because everybody is a team member. You're not a developer or a tester. So I can help my tester come up with a few test cases. That's the best approach. And the team that I have today doing that, they are knocking it out of the park.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we were talking about walk the board. But if we're gonna ask, like, if we're gonna do 5 whys on everything, we should do that. That's a whole different discussion. We can do that as a separate discussion. Yeah. 5 whys on everything Scrum related.
Right.
But if we're gonna do the whys about the daily stand up, like why even wait to have it be done? Like I don't think you're waiting. I don't think you're waiting at all. I mean, you certainly can change and have little mini meetings as you go along. I think the purpose is like a dedicated, when we all get in the morning before we start working. It's our plan of attack. Like it's all of the construction workers meeting at the construction site before we start our work, to be like, hey, you're gonna do the framing, you're gonna do whatever, you're gonna work the nail down.
It's funny you should use that metaphor, because when we were putting up that new building, I actually made a little video on my phone. Those guys that meet in the morning, they would have a huddle, and they would decide on the plan of attack, and they'd go and do their shit, right, and then at lunchtime they get together again. It's
that's
actually
what they do.
real.
That's a break time for them. At lunchtime they break.
Yeah,
and they may not do the same job after lunch. They may pivot
but it's an
to a different
opportunity
job.
to synchronize. That's the whole point.
It is an opportunity to synchronize.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. Well, the development teams is the exact same way. I mean, a lot of the issues that you have. We talked about this very slightly last time, and I feel we could have stayed on this topic a lot longer about team size, because when the team is 5, 6, 7 people, it's pretty easy to talk about what you're doing and sync up. When the team is like 15 people, forget it.
Yeah, and it's also a factor of whether they're co-located or not, because it's difficult if you're not.
Yeah. I don't know. So in the walk the board method, like that's my only thing about the walk the board method that kind of bothered me when I was using it in my specific team, was talking about things that I knew the team hadn't even started, and I don't even remember. This might be when I was a team member. This might not even have been when I was a Scrum Master. I really can't remember when I used this method. I specifically remember using this method, but I can't remember. I think I was a team member, and I remember whoever was directing the daily Scrum talking about things that I didn't care about. I was like, we're not even working on this. Like when if your Scrum is like if your cadence is 2 weeks and you're like 7 days into the 10-day cadence, and there's the bottom 2 items of the sprint are like they're not getting done. Like everyone just knows they're not getting done. The product owner just hasn't pulled them out because maybe they don't want to face the wrath of the business when they know that things are getting pulled out or whatever. But I'm like, just take them out. Like everyone knows they're not going to make it. Just take them out.
Some product owners will leave them in there, right? As stretch goals.
Yeah, stretch goal. Yeah, well that again. Well, yeah. Well, you're welcome, product owners, because SAFe removed the term stretch goal for you guys. Mm-hmm. You guys that were doing stretch goals, like they were like included anyway, and you were just hoping to make a commitment and then punish your team for not hitting their stretch goals. Like you're the reason that term got renamed. Thanks.
Yeah, so I think primarily the team should be deciding what they're discussing, not somebody who's orchestrating the call. I mean, the Scrum Master should not be the one saying, let's talk about this story. It should be the team doing that.
Yeah, well, that brings up an interesting, what does the term facilitation even mean at that point? Because the Scrum Master is supposed to facilitate the meeting. Like that, I think that's straight out of the Scrum Guide. Mm-hmm. But like, what does facilitation mean?
Yeah, so I think to me, it's really about making sure that the meeting is scheduled, making sure that the right people are invited and only the right people are invited, making sure that the time box is respected, and then if people get on a tangent, which often happens, making sure that they're reined in, right? Limit the thing to typically 15 minutes, but yet don't stifle the conversation. So offer up, the opportunity to reconvene afterwards, or stay on the call after the main stand-up is over, or some people call that the 16th minute or whatever it is. Doesn't matter.
I got a definition for facilitate. Here we go. It's to make easier or less difficult, to help forward, an action or a process to help forward, and then to assist the progress of with regard to a person, or assist progress of. But mainly is the verb here is to make easier or less difficult. So I think you're kind of spot on with the description there, which is like the point is like, yeah, like if people are kind of interrupting or whatever, kind of gently nudge them back on topic. It's kind of like when things kind of stall, kind of like push them back to where they are, But yeah, it's like it's not for you.
Yeah, and developers typically, dev team members now, I should be correct when I say that. Dev team members, they're typically very enthused about the topic that they're discussing, so they might get into the here's how you solve it type of thing.
Yeah.
So somebody raises a question and somebody else who thinks they can help, they're going to get into, well, this is what you do and you can do this, you can do that. The point is not to solve it in the meeting, right? So when they do that, the Scrum Master who's facilitating can say, that's excellent. Maybe you can stay on after the call is over, the main stand-up, and continue the discussion because there's value in that.
Yeah.
But there's no need for everybody else to stay in on this.
I remember as a team member, I used to do that all the time, where I would discover the root cause for a bug, and I would say, "Oh, this is because of some crazy thing in the database, or something was happening, or some variable was being called in." Or like the thing I remember all the time was nulls versus blanks in the database causing issues or whatever, and like there's nothing like I figured the reason for this bug or whatever, like it has to do generally with whatever, like if you want to talk about it more, like we can sync back up at my desk when we're done here, and anybody that's interested, we can talk about it. And then we can talk about it in the room with everyone there, but like because everyone's like over the internet right now and nobody's in person or whatever, like that doesn't happen. But when everyone was working out of the workspaces, basically what you do is you go back to that person's desk and look at, you know what I mean? So excited about you fix something or you solve some kind of problem or whatever, and everyone wants to see how you solve that problem, or everyone wants to hear about how you solve that problem, especially for like high severity or maybe not high severity, but high visibility items, especially. And stuff like that can take over a stand-up, especially if the team is excited about how you figured out what the problem was. Yeah, stuff like that happens all the time. I remember when I was just a team member, I remember stuff like that happens all the time. And as a Scrum Master, you'd be like, I'm very happy you got out of the problem, but like let's get through the planning of what we're going to do today, and then you guys can, after we're all done here, like whoever's interested can go back to your desk or office or cube or whatever, and you guys can spend as much time as you want.
Yeah, so in addition to just like the day-to-day actual work items, this synchronization has other things included. Like for example, at the stand-up, somebody could say, well, hey guys, I have a dentist appointment 2:30 to 3:30.
Yeah.
Right. So if you're looking for me, you won't find me, right? That kind of thing.
Right.
It just helps the team. That's the synchronization part. It helps the team work efficiently, right? And that efficiency over time makes them more effective.
Yeah.
So I would say definitely the Scrum Master as a facilitator should not be saying, hey, take that offline or send an email. No, just talk about it. It's over in a few seconds, right? If there's anything where it impacts people's availability, or I've got these ISP coming in to do some changes at my house, I'll be offline potentially between X and Y. Good to know. So that way when I ping you, respond, I know why.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's those domestic things as well.
Let me ask you a question. Like if you were starting either starting a new, I don't know if these are different, so you have to tell me if they're different, but if you were starting a new team, like on a new project, new team, or if you were coming in as a Scrum Master for the first time to a team that you were replacing a Scrum Master, or maybe didn't have one, whatever, either one's kind of equally different, the same, I don't know. But if you were coming into a team as a new Scrum Master, like, would you employ the walk the board method, or would you employ the 3 questions method, or another method? Like, what do you think would be like your standard method coming in?
That's a great question. So first of all, you're coming into an existing team.
Yeah.
So I think in order to build that comradeship, rapport, right? I wouldn't come in and dictate a method. I would come in and just simply observe for a bit.
See what they're doing.
To see how they're doing and how effective are they at what they're doing. You know, they may be almost there. They may be far away from where they need to be.
Yeah.
And then suggest improvements and say, how about instead of the 3 questions, we try this. Now, when you position something like that, you don't want it to come across as this new guy or this new lady saying this is the best way to do it.
Yeah.
We've been doing it like this for years and it's working for us. They think it is, right? So don't go in and upsell the apple cart. Just say, you know, let's just try this as an experiment.
Yeah.
Try it for a sprint. See what we think. You know, and if we don't like it, we can always go back, right? But underpin that with the hypothesis. We're doing this because, not because I say so, right? We're doing this because there's a better way, because we seem to go over every time, right? I've noticed that over the last week that we're going, you know, 30 minutes plus on a stand-up. So have those reasons and then build those into a hypothesis that says, if we walk the board, we might be able to get done quicker. We might be able to be more efficient, right? Those are the hypotheses with measurable targets. My examples were not measurable, except for we get done earlier, right, than where we are now. Those kinds of things. So I would come in and observe first, make recommendations, change one thing at a time, and treat things as an experiment. Those are the 4 things.
What about a new team?
All right. So with a new team, you do have some options. With a new team, they don't know each other yet.
Yeah.
So you don't have this. Oh yeah, we've been working this way for a while, and then you know who are you to come in and question how we do things. So with a new team, you need to now kind of influence your authority somewhat and say, here's what I found that's worked well in my past. Right? They haven't done anything yet, so you say, well, here's what I've also found that really hasn't. So let's not do those things, right? So you're coming across as somewhat of an experienced expert in the field, saying these are the ways to go and these are things to avoid.
Yeah.
And you're then influencing the team to adopt those things that you're recommending. I think you have a hand to play there that's a lot freer than with an existing team. You say, let's just do it this way.
Yeah.
And if there is any resistance, again, you can always revert back to the experimentation, right? When there's resistance, so why don't we try it? Before we knock it, let's try it. It might work, it might not. If it doesn't work, I'm open to changes. Right? But if it works, then that's what I found works in the past. Maybe it won't work here. Let's just try it.
I like the power of let's just try something. You know?
I think it's very powerful. I think the null hypothesis is also very powerful, where you go in and you say, well, this is what we think our null hypothesis is. Let's try and disprove that, right?
Yeah. I think it's very powerful in an organization that is properly aligned the process underneath the Scrum Master. Like if the process is being dictated by quotes the business, and the business is an effect of the product owner and or whoever the product owner works for, like many organizations, like wherever the money is derived from, basically, like you're kind of some of your tools are restricted, but that's a conversation for a whole different podcast. So we talked about the stand up. I'm gonna flip that card over. We talked about the stand up. What do you want to pivot to? Do you want to pivot to? I think we should pivot to retros because that's probably the next easiest, quickest. I think the more difficult ones I think we're gonna get through is the sprint planning and the review. Because I still can't remember what I was trying to remember with the review. I think the retros are probably an easy one. So I heard recently it wasn't really a new idea to me, but it was something that I actually have not tried with any teams that I've ever been on, like as a team member or Scrum Master or product owner, which is the concept of the normal concept of a retro is you do your sprint, you come to the end of the sprint, and on the last day of the sprint, you do your sprint review, and then you do your retro, and then you catapult into sprint planning, which is at the very next, the beginning of the very next sprint that you start. So it's like it bookends, the end of one sprint and the beginning of another, and your retro is in there at the very, very end, and it's kind of like the capstone at the end of the bookend capstone. There's a bunch of other, whatever. But somebody brought up an interesting thing recently, which is don't do just like a 2 week long sprint. Don't do an hour and a half long retro, just a by the book amount of time. But break that time into smaller segments over the course of the entire sprint. So if it's like an hour and a half, if it normally would be an hour and a half on the last day of a 2 week sprint, instead have it be like the last 10 minutes of the day, last 10 15 minutes of the day or whatever, every single day of your sprint, or maybe every week, stop for whatever, or potentially even have your retro be an on-demand retro whenever the team encounters a problem. Have pull the cord on the line and stop production and swarm on what is the problem, how come we had this problem, how can we never have this problem again type of, you probably have to employ some kind of battery of questions kind of facilitated by the Scrum Master, like a Toyota Kata, kind of like what is the problem that we had, maybe employ a 5 whys of like why we had the problem or whatever to get a true cause, and then segue into like how can we never have this problem again, and then move along to fix it or something like that.
Yeah, I think there's a lot to unpack there. So
there's a lot, yeah.
Yeah, so I think first of all, a retro is something that is not optional. Yeah. Right, because the onus is on the team to inspect and adapt. How do you improve if you don't do that? And we should be constantly in pursuit of that improvement, right? So that's the first thing, because oftentimes, you'll hear teams that say, "Well, we're doing really well. We're as good as it can get.
We are great.
So we don't need to improve.
No retro necessary.
Exactly.
We are hot fire."
Right. Yeah, we're high performing, right?
We're high performing. There's no way we can improve at all.
And they will have metrics they point at. They'll say, "Look at our metrics. We're high performing. We hit 100% of our commit." But your commit was really very conservative, right? So it can be gamed. But so first of all, not optional. Got to do a retro. Now, is it a retro at the end of the sprint, to your point, or do we have multiple, a few minutes a day, etc., on demand, pull the cord type of thing? I think it's up to the team to decide that. Mm-hmm. And again, the teams that are more mature will not wait until the end of the sprint retro. And some of this is influenced by the team coach, the Scrum Master, by encouraging people to speak up. Now, of course, you have your daily stand-ups where people can raise their hand and say, "Hey, we're not doing this right."
Yeah.
Sometimes people are just deep into the day-to-day, the development activities, development testing, etc.
Yeah.
So they may not think about the process issues that are going off kilter.
Sure.
Right? This is where the Scrum Master needs to be savvy enough to say, I notice we're doing this, right? And 2 sprints ago, we decided not to, and we're falling into that anti-pattern, right? Now, some of the best ways to do that, so don't schedule more meetings if you don't need to. Some of the best ways to do that is at the stand-up, before people walk the board, and you don't have to do this daily. You can do it, 2 times a sprint, 3 times a sprint, depends. It's just up to you. And it depends on the level of maturity that the team has. But typically 2 to 3 times a sprint at a minimum. The Scrum Master would simply bring up anything that the team is not doing optimally, mention that, have at hand the working agreement so they can be reviewed and updated quickly, and then hand over the microphone, as it were.
Hang on, I gotta stop you because I got lost for a second. As part of the daily Scrum, is that what we said?
Yes, as part of the daily Scrum, you say, we decided not to do this, or this is something that's not working well, and as a team, we agreed we would do this. You can do this at the beginning of the daily Scrum, or you can do it at the end in the 16th minute in the parking lot. That's okay.
Yeah.
But use that time box instead of scheduling yet another meeting. So when you schedule a 10-minute meeting, it's 10 minutes times 7 people.
Sure.
You've lost an hour.
Sure. Yeah.
Right, plus.
Right,
And the switching costs, all of that stuff. So yeah, try and build in that, because there are days, and here's the thing, every day your stand-up isn't the same, right? Hopefully, otherwise it's too scripted.
Yeah.
There are days when it's lightweight. There are days when people don't have impediments, people don't have a lot of questions on what everybody else is doing or what you're doing, etc. And you could get done quicker. Well, when you look like that's happening, that's when the Scrum Master could say, okay, how about we quickly take a minute to review this,
Yeah.
right? So it's up to the Scrum Master to have that stuff ready, right? And they could have it ready every day and not use it for
Sure.
a week. That's
Sure.
okay.
Yeah.
But if you did get the opportunity, bam, right? You're ready. Go
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
That's what I would recommend people to do.
So are you gonna use the available time in that 15 minutes? Like you're basically gonna expand whatever the development team doesn't use. You're gonna expand that to kind of sneak in a little hint at whatever you can get for retrospective in that time box.
Yes, and you can do that easily if you select the item you want to discuss. You don't want to discuss 10 things, right?
Right.
But yeah, absolutely. Yes, I'm suggesting that exactly.
Huh.
You can sneak it in at the end of it. Let's say the team spent 12 minutes out of the 15. You've got 3.
Yeah.
Plus the parking lot, which is a 16th minute thing that might only be a minute. So you have 4 or 5 minutes there, right? You're not going to run over the 15-minute time box anyway. So I'd say use the opportunity. Don't wait. Because waiting makes it worse.
But like, wouldn't that like I there are very few things that I can think of that I would bring up to my team, like especially if I'm challenging them. Like sometimes I probably challenge them as a product owner a lot more than I would challenge them as a Scrum Master. So like I'm like overestimating here, but a lot of things that are like process improvement type of stuff, they're going to take more than 3 minutes, especially if you're trying to get everyone's input. You know, you're going to run over that 15-minute time box real fast.
I think it depends on the item. So, if you're talking about an optimization thing, that may be true, what you're saying. But if you're talking about something that you've observed that is really not working well, your choices are either raise it now, don't raise it at all till the end of the sprint at the official retrospective.
Yeah.
I'm saying do the former, because it may not even be an issue by the time the retro comes around. You've already solved it. This is a flag, right? This is something that's not going well right now. Can we alter course? Rather than what can we do better? Throw up some ideas on a board and vote on it.
I can see what you're saying. Yeah.
That can happen at the retro. That's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, if otherwise it's an opportunity lost, I think, time-wise.
I can see what you're saying. I like an example of this for me would be like I had a my teams on a particular project were using Jira, like we like the single team. The team was part of a larger project in Jira. Jira calls it projects. I don't know why. I hate that term, but the one team was part of a project in Jira that several teams participated in. And so basically it was like one product backlog, several teams working out of that product backlog. And the template that got applied to the product backlog was shared across all those teams. So somebody from one of the teams, and I don't know who it was. I actually do know who it was, but I'm not going to blast him. But one person from one of the teams happened to have administrative access and made a process change, and that process change got applied to all the teams. And the process change basically, I'm going to try to make a long story extremely short. What they were trying to do was they were trying to come up with a process where they could verify with the business that the resolution for something that came in as a production bug that got solved in the sprint the resolution was acceptable to the business, so that by the time we resolved it and released it, we didn't have to do any back and forth or whatever. Which, as a product owner, I was like, I 100% disagree with this process. But they worked all this out with the business stakeholders and the people who had influence and whatnot to kind of like turn bugs back is like not really fixing whatever. Again, like the issue I would have brought, if I could have pulled the cord and stopped the line there, I'd have been like, we don't need, like, you can't have a software development process where things go from to do to in progress to done that involve anyone from outside of the development team. Because you, like, at that point, like, we can do something, but I'm basically taking it to a certain point with this team and calling it done and sending it to another team's board to verify or whatever.
I see what you're saying.
That's the proper way to do it. But like, they basically injected somebody who wasn't on the team in the middle of the team's processes without basically talking to the team. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something I could have brought up as I could have, pulled the cord, stopped there and be like, hey, we can't have this as our process. We can't, to be fair to the stakeholder, that individual was very responsive, and they were not a roadblock in any way, shape, or form in this business case. They were never a problem. They never delayed anything. They were never a reason for anything missing its deliverable in the sprint. It never caused a problem. So to check myself on this, like I could be like, oh, Brian, you're being very petty or whatever. Like there's no reason. But my point was like, that is not our process. Our process is the development team has a to-do column. They pick things up in order from the to-do column. They're in progress, and they work on them until they're done, and then they mark them as done, and then it goes to the next environment and goes out into the ether or whatever. Like, I was like, we can't have people who, if people need to be on this team to test things this team is doing, then they need to be on the team. So like that was one of the things, like they made that change. Well, like I was not aware they made the change, but the point was, it's probably not a great example, but the point was, the change was made and the team was using the process.
Right.
Okay. When I found out about it, I was like, this is not acceptable at all. In no way, shape, or form is this acceptable. So like my thing to the team, I brought it up in a retro. I had to wait till the end of the sprint. Actually, I waited 2 sprints because I don't know why. I was busy with other teams. I don't know. I really don't remember. But I waited 2 sprints, and I brought it up at a retro at the end of the sprint. But with what we're talking about, if we would have met every day, or if I would have found 3 or 4 minutes at the end of a sprint to say, hey, I have a big problem with this part of the process. Well, maybe we couldn't have solved it in 3 or 4 minutes. But we probably could have scheduled something, to 30 minutes maybe to just talk about that item.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's I would easily have chewed up 30 minutes in a retro just talking about my problem with this process and why it was very destructive for the team. Okay. Like that's a good example of something I would have had I would have been able to knock out quickly. Even if I couldn't have knocked out the whole topic, I could have let the team know, hey, I have a big problem with this. I think it's impacting us negatively, and we should talk about it.
Yeah, so your example is actually one that I've seen in practice before,
good,
right?
good,
So
yeah.
here's how I've seen this. The team has to do in progress done. In comes UAT. So in progress, UAT done.
Yeah, right.
But UAT are not part of the team as such. They're a business team external to the team.
Yeah.
So now things trickle into UAT and they start stacking up, right? But the team, the development team, has no influence on those,
Yeah.
right? So to your point, yes, either mark them as UAT, but outside of your team, as far as your team is concerned, you're done. So here, there's a leap of faith, right? The leap of faith is the dev team is saying, we are done. However, business, please test this. If you think something is wrong, we'll take a look at it. But if you don't think there's anything wrong, done is where it stays, right? That's the exception-based scenario, rather than everything is still in UAT until they say it's done.
Right.
So what happens is they get to it when they get to it, because they have their full-time jobs. So things aren't getting to done now, suddenly, right? And your flow suffers. So yeah, this process has to be optimized where you've got optimal flow that is in the control of the team, but without sacrificing those real checkpoints, like UAT is an example here, right? Take it outside the team. I think you hit that on the head. Take it outside the team.
Yeah,
You make it a policy, right, on your lane.
Yeah. So the UAT was actually the status for me. That was the issue, or the state, or whatever you want to call it. And that's exactly what I was like, listen, if you're going to go to external stakeholders, like people who are outside the team, and you're going to rely on them to tell you whether something passes or fails, like it needs, like when you send it to them, the team already certifies that it's certified is probably a terrible word. The team already says that it's ready for them to test. Or that's probably also terrible. Listen, the team says it's done. Anybody external to the team can't start until the team says it's done. So it is done for the team. Whatever you want to call that or wrap that in or whatever, like it is done. That is the team's definition of done.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, I don't understand why we would somebody created another status in the system or whatever. But I was like, look, it's just moving from environment to environment.
So I think oftentimes people are looking to justify where things land, right? They create these statuses like development done, so the developers could say, "Hey, as far as we're concerned, it's done."
Mm-hmm.
Testers, same thing. So development done means it's ready for testing, right? But the testers say, "Well, we're already busy testing. We don't want stuff in testing, so we're going to have another column that says, ready for testing, and we're going to pile stuff in there." Yeah. These are artificial columns. Right. They really need to be decimated.
I mean, I think I agree with you. They are artificial columns because as a product owner, I'm going to speak for a product owner.
Sure.
As a product owner, I agree. Like the only thing that you should communicate back to your business is it is in development. Meaning it is in the development team being worked on right now. QA, active development, code review, being moved to the whatever environment or whatever, like being branch, merge, whatever, like doesn't matter. It's not available for the business users to look at, so it's in development. Like forget about more granular statuses than that. Okay?
Yep.
It's in development. Like don't question like deep in that. I've been on teams where like they want to know like, well, the developer's working on it, or the developer he's done with it, but it's in code review by another developer, and it's been merged and whatever, and like all those are like granular status. Oh, it's ready for QA to test. It's in active QA testing. It's been done in QA, but it hasn't been moved to the next environment. Oh, it's been moved to whatever. Like at that point, you're just playing games, man.
Well, you got to question the value of that information for the stakeholders, don't you?
Dude,
what's the value of you knowing that it's in this column versus that column?
None.
Right.
There's no value.
I fully agree.
You're just playing games with statuses at that point. Okay. The value is the thing is developed and it's ready for my business users to look at.
Yep, and it should just be a dashboard at that stage, right?
Yeah, right. Yeah, it should be a dashboard. I mean, it should be a dashboard, but like to take that a step further, it should be like if there are users. This is going to be a really strange statement, but stick with me on it. If there are users in front of your users that need to look at something before they are allowed to see it. I mean, it's a very strange statement, but it's very common. Okay.
Oh yeah.
It's like, we're building software that, and we want to get feedback from the users. What they really mean is like there's internal stakeholders and external stakeholders of the organization. They want to run it past the internal stakeholders first to get their thumbs up or suggestions or feedback or whatever, so that they don't like infuriate their external stakeholders. Like, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm not trying to make a statement about it. That's just reality. That's just the way it is.
Yep.
But they're just trying to get some feedback and make some improvements and make things better, and not infuriate their end users. I get it. It's fine.
Yeah, of course, ideally, those end users would be in your BAT team, right?
Correct. Yeah, right.
They're the ones that are looking at it.
Yeah.
So you're cutting down the feedback loop, right?
I agree.
That way.
I agree.
But yeah.
In actuality, I agree. But this is that's not the way a lot of the higher up in the business hierarchy you get. Like the more like, ooh, we can't show our flaws or what. Ooh, gotta hide this, hide that, or whatever. There is that. Like I am 100% on board with like the transparency and inspection and adaptation, and be like, look, man, like maybe there's flaws, but like we know what the flaws are and we're gonna overcome them, and like we understand your concerns. We're gonna take them into consideration when we're working on things, and we're not trying to hide things. We're trying to do the best thing we can for you, and the user should understand that and believe it to be true. But like that's not the reality is like.
Yeah.
That when the higher you get in an organization, the more you're like, let me hide my flaws. Oh my goodness, you might see a flaw.
Right?
Ridiculous. No, but like again, it's like what we're trying to do versus reality. Like it's kind of hard to say. There's a balancing act, but
yeah, absolutely,
there really is.
I think, though, to kind of round off the conversation on this idea of being able to pull the string, pull the cord, whatever, right? That should be very, very strongly encouraged, I think. And it should be encouraged across the board.
Yeah.
Stop the line now because things are going off here. And then once you stop it, don't look at the person who pulled the cord as, how dare you stop this line? We were doing great. My part's working well, right? It's crazy. It's like being on a boat. You're rowing the boat and there's a hole. And you go, yeah, but the hole's on your side. It's like, come on, that's crazy. You're all sunk. Yeah. So encourage that idea, and then everybody needs to then be empowered to solve the issue.
Yeah, like I feel a Scrum Master could go a long way to help with that. You know what I mean? What you just described, which is like, hey man, don't look at the person who pointed the problem out as like
culprit.
yeah. Like the Scrum Master can go a long way and be like, hey man, what are you doing? Like this is our problem. This is a team's problem. Like leadership's going to hold the team accountable. Like the fact that somebody found the problem doesn't mean like just because their eyes are open, they're pointing at the problem, doesn't make them the reason for the problem. Like we need to work together to solve the problem. Yeah, Scrum Master could work product owner too. Like I don't know, man. Like,
so yes, but the product owner is not embedded with the team all the time necessarily, like all day long, right? That's my point.
I understand what you're saying, but I also respectfully disagree, because the product owner in a lot of organizations is the direct link to the business. So when I'm a product owner now and my team discovers something that is a problem in the software, like they have a I want to stop very short of saying they have a responsibility, but they are better placed than anyone else on the team to go to the business and say, oh, my team discovered this, they're getting in front of it, but it's going to cause a problem. Okay, my team discovered this. We jumped on it. We're all over it. No, there's not a big issue. You know what I mean? Like the product owner is the main person to relieve the business's stress when a problem is found, to let them know the team has it.
Fully agree with all of what you just said. The thing is that what I'm saying is that the product owner isn't necessarily in the room, so to speak, when the problem happens. But the Scrum Master is.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So the Scrum Master's first reaction would be to say, thank you for raising the alarm to the team member, and then, who can help here, right? Deal with it, but at the same time, pick up the phone, right, and talk to the product owner and say, here's why the line has stopped.
Yeah.
And then you're right. Then the product owner goes to the stakeholders and the business, says, this is what's happened. The team's on it, right? Potentially this is the impact, whatever you know about it at the time. So, don't wait on it. That's the point. And I think that message is pervasive. The team level at that point, don't wait on it. Don't wait till the next day where you say, hey, I see this as a problem maybe, right? No, pull the cord. And then as a Scrum Master, you're encouraging that, to your point, but you're also then communicating to the product owner saying, the line has stopped. Here's why, right? We're on it. I'll let you know. I'll keep you posted. And then this, in turn, right, the product owner keeps the stakeholders posted. The frequency and the messaging obviously varies, right? Because the product owner may well understand at a granular level why you stopped the line. The stakeholders more of a macro level, right? What does this mean to us? As a stakeholder, I just want to know, are we still going to be done at the end of this sprint with what we said we would do, right? And the answer may well be, we don't know, but we're going to try. Or this is minor, we'll be over it soon, everybody's on it, right? And yes, we think we can recover. Everybody just works a little extra, that kind of thing. Or this could be big, but you don't know that yet because it's early. So I think all around, this idea of encouraging pulling of the cord, that needs to be really fostered within the team. And yes, do it, because Toyota proved that it works. Right? GM proved not doing it doesn't work. Right? We know that. So let's learn from that.
Yeah, it's a very interesting idea. I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. I probably could have dug into the concept of retros, like the doing them all in one lump sum at the end of the sprint versus I could even go for breaking them up into at the end of each week, doing a 45-minute deal at the end of each week. You know what I mean? Like a weekly end of retro versus the daily 10 minutes just seems weird to me, because it's you would have to schedule something. It seems like something I would not be interested in doing, because you basically would have an event at the very beginning of your day and an event at the very end of your day.
Yeah, or even lumping it in the daily stand-up is not a good idea, because you're going to elongate that process, right?
You would, yeah. And I wouldn't want to do that, because then your stand-ups would... I wouldn't want to do that myself, because I could easily see somebody coming in, especially somebody with less experience, being like, well, maybe we can just make the stand-ups 30 minutes, then the first 15 minutes will be this, and the last 15 minutes, no, man, I don't want to be in a room for 30 minutes and at 9 in the morning, 8 in the morning, whatever it is. But the process further breaks down when if everyone was in one room, all co-located, or if everyone is in the same time zone, I could deal with it. We're gonna have at 9 in the morning, we're all gonna meet for 15 minutes, and then at 5 p.m., 4:30 p.m., whatever, we're all gonna meet for another 15 minutes. Okay, I think that's a little bit too much overhead.
Yeah.
Because it seems like you're trying to keep tabs on me. But I could deal with that. But if everyone's in different time zones, that is not possible. You're not going to be able to begin the day and cap the day with meetings or whatever.
Yeah, I concur with that. I think that's too much overhead.
Yeah.
So I think if you're encouraging the team to pull the cord, and yet at the same time you're also checking in once in a while, that probably covers it very well. I think. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
The other thing, before I forget, is even if nothing happens and you're not doing any of these things, it's probably a worthwhile thing for the Scrum Master to circle back to your commitments from the last sprint's retro.
Yeah.
During the sprint. Don't wait till the end of the sprint. During the sprint, say, hey, guys, last sprint we decided to do these things. Just want to make sure we're doing that, right? Are we doing that, right? If not, why not? Just a quick checkpoint there.
Yeah, that's true.
2 or 3 times a sprint might be good.
Let's wrap the topic of retros. I hope we gave people who had some ideas, or I hope we gave some people some new ideas about how to do the retros. I'm not really sure. To me, I'm not really sure if I've changed my mind. I like to have the longer. I like to have the longer period of time to just kind of sit down with people, maybe schedule, like if we were all in one office, it'd be like let's like go away for lunch or go outside of the corporate area, or maybe like go to a meeting room or a room that we aren't normally in or whatever. Something that like breaks the monotony of the normal workday to make you feel like you're not like in that work mode, to try to get you to get into a different mental space to really evaluate the processes and the things that you're doing every day. And I feel like I think with my current teams, we have an hour plan for this, and I always tell them, like, I was like, dude, in an hour, like we're just barely scratching where we need to get to in an hour. And I always felt like maybe like an hour and a half. An hour and a half is the prescribed amount of time for a 2-week sprint for my teams. But I always felt like if I could get them, if all my teams are not co-located at all, but if my teams were all co-located and I was able to like take them out to lunch or whatever, like here in the local area, especially like some of the venues that I know that I could get to in the local area, I would definitely take them to the local area, take them out. I would do the whole retro over lunch. Like I would take notes or cards or whatever myself. I'd take whatever I need, and I would do it over lunch, and I'd book 2 hours, like 2 solid hours for the retro.
So it's funny hearing you say that, because that's exactly how I did my retros on that last on one of my last projects. That was a global project.
Yeah.
The team was co-located.
Yeah.
So we would go out for lunch, and we would book a 2-hour time slot for lunch.
Right.
We would have lunch, and then after lunch, we would simply get into the retro at that point, right? And I would make notes on. I would be the only one taking my laptop, so I know that people are focused. They're not multitasking or anything like that.
Exactly.
It worked really, really well, and people liked that format. But unfortunately, we don't have that luxury anymore right now, at least. And so I think we just have to use some of these electronic tools the best we can.
But that's part of what we were talking about. Is like you're talking about breaking up the retro so that like you don't. I mean, I can definitely see like when you encounter a big problem, I could definitely see pausing and using as much time as you need and taking like. I guess I could see like recording the time that you used just to talk about that topic and then taking it away from the available time at the end of the sprint or whatever. Like my only concern about changing my normal way of doing a retro like this is that you don't get that deep discussion that you get when you really hit your stride with a retro of that type, where you're taking the team out of the normal environment for a preset amount of time, and you're really getting them to commit to, like you said, well, they're not behind a computer or whatever.
Right.
They're not worried about like what the next thing they're getting to is going to be, or what deployment or whatever they're going to get to, because like you're already taking them out for lunch, so they're already away and not thinking about they're not thinking about context switching or whatever. You know what I mean? That'd be the only thing about trying to pivot the way I do a retro that I'd be concerned about. Is like,
yeah, and I fully concur. I mean, getting them out of their normal space, is the best way, right? But it doesn't have to be one way or the other. You can still do that. It's still a worthwhile thing to take the team out for lunch anyway.
Yeah.
But to your point, at the end of the sprint, still reserve that time. It probably isn't going to take the whole time though, because you've already been on top of some of these things that you experience or the team experiences over the sprint. So you can maybe get straight into it and brainstorm, right, in that retro, and then do the usual things, collect ideas, gather data, et cetera. You can do all of that. It may not take you the hour and a half.
I will say though, the one thing that came out of here that I may apply when I go back to being a Scrum Master is eating up the extra time of the daily Scrum to basically explore retro items, because like that time's already booked out in the 20% overhead. That time's booked out already, so like I'm not losing any time by being like, oh, we finished in 8 minutes. We have 7 minutes left. Like let's talk about it. Like, did anything come up that like we could be doing better, or did anything come up, or like we see a process improvement to come out of this or whatever, and to just take notes in the time we have, when just kind of like organically cut it off when we hit our time box or whatever, and take notes, and then when the retro happens, I can already begin with like, these are the things during the sprint that we kind of observed. Like what do we want to, like a lean coffee style, like already start with like, these are the things that we said during the sprint. Let's vote on these. Obviously we can put more topics on there, but like,
right.
Let's vote on these. They'll all be fresh on our minds, because I'm maybe I'm adding things to it, but like probably it will be things the team brought. You know, we encountered this problem, or we had this problem, or oh, we had this branch merge problem, or oh, the environment was down, whatever, or whatever. You mean like those things would appear on the board for people to vote on, and be like, oh, these are the things we want to take action on, or whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I fully agree. You know, get the board going, right? Yeah. Keep it updated throughout the sprint. Don't wait till end of the sprint retro and then go, here's a board that's empty, start putting your stickies on it. No, get ahead of it. You're right. And what better mix of topics for people to focus on than what they've actually experienced and what has actually been raised over the sprint. Yeah. So much easier to focus on that than sit there with a blank mind and say, what could we be doing better? Right? And then people start justifying it. Maybe instead of sending an email, if you pick up the phone, we could be more effective. Yeah, you could, but is that the best value, right? Of improving when you have all these problems that the team actually did experience. So I agree with you there. Keep it going, and I, you know, even that board, you don't have to wait till the end of the sprint retro to revisit that board or keep visiting it. So do that 2 or 3 times, 4 or 5 times, depends, right, on the time available. If you find that your dailies are getting wrapped up early, there's no harm in saying, here's the board of things that we're going to look at. Do we have anything more to add? Have we changed on any of these? Right? Keep it fresh. So yeah, it is. The onus is on the Scrum Master, though. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's good. It's
I can tell you're looking forward to getting back to being a Scrum Master.
I'm not, but like this is a very. I mean, it's an interesting idea to basically like seed your retro. I mean, the only like the challenge to this is like, you want to do it organically. Like, you don't want to stifle ideas from your team. That would be the challenge of this, is like, the ideas that you think are the challenges as the Scrum Master that you overhear and that you think are the takeaways are not actually the problems. That would be the only thing that is cautionary here.
So you're not the one who owns the board. Right? You're also not the one who is putting things on there necessarily. You're encouraging the team to post things on the board. So they're doing it throughout.
You make a good point. I mean, if you can take yourself out of the hey, somebody should add that idea to our retro board for this sprint, and then you just don't add anything. I mean, obviously, if you own the process, you probably should add some process related things if you think it's a problem. But actually, maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you should influence the team to be like, do you think that the way we're doing this is a problem? Maybe you should add it to
Who does it impact in the team, right? And then get them to own it, maybe. Yeah,
I think you're right. I think that would be a much more powerful way to help your team along than you basically doing everything, because it kind of absolves them of their responsibility to take ownership of the processes of their own team. You're just facilitating the team. It's them doing the work.
Mm-hmm.
This is like retrospectives. Like what an interesting topic. I think